When are we talking about Mark Cuban? Because that is someone.
All right, so quickly, we'll touch on this. What Cuban, reiterate what he said this past week.
I thought it was pretty fascinating. I'm going to actually get the quote up just so that I don't mangle it here. He was asked, he went on one of the Mavericks local podcasts. I thought it was great that he's still going on those, right? I think it's nice that he's still this accessible. And he said he doesn't regret selling the team, but he regrets the way he sold the team. He said that he should have opened up the bidding process and been more concerned with who was going to acquire the team, what they were going to do with the team, kind of had more than one choice on that front, and that he also regretted the way that he was sort of X'd out of future leadership.
Yes.
So you remember when the deal was announced that it was, Mark Cuban's going to stay on and run basketball operations. And we were all sort of like, how's that going to happen? And subsequently, you had a similar announcement in Boston that has now been rolled back somewhat, although Wick is still going to be the CEO of that team, right?
And we'll see, like, how...
We'll see what that means.
It could be the exact same situation.
It could be.
Like, Cuban didn't get tossed aside till a few months after the deal went down. He was in that purported role as head of basketball operations early, but it took a few months. I could see, ultimately, Wick and Bill Chisholm in Boston are going to... If they clash... Bill's going to have the final say.
In the Lakers sale, it's been announced that Jeannie Buss will remain the governor and the president of the team. We'll have to see. Mark specifically in this podcast, though, went into it more deeply, and he talked about how there was a clause in the sale, the contract of sale, that he would remain on in that role, that he would be involved in every basketball decision the team made, that he would have authority in that department, and that he says the NBA struck that clause and said, we will not approve the sale if this clause isn't here.
I can see that.
The NBA has denied doing that.
Yeah,
Mark says he can produce the lawyer letter that says, who knows? It's not the first time.
Well, the NBA, and I report a lot on this during the Bill Chisholm Wick stuff, like the NBA doesn't want owners to be able to have their cake and eat it too. So if Mark Cuban wants to sell and reap the rewards of selling your team, great, do that. But you also can't stipulate contractually that the only way this team can be sold is if you give me control of basketball operations.
Yeah. No, and I agree. And the NBA has said, we're going to draw the line with the clarity of if you still own at least 15% of the team, you can sell them all of your majority stake, but hold on to 15%, you can be the governor.
Yep.
You're a team owner still. You can be the governor. If you have less than 15%, you cannot. And you cannot stipulate, to your point in the deal, that that's the condition for sale. However, it was very interesting to hear him saying he regretted the way he sold the team, because we have not heard that from him before. And he sort of, expounded on just again, I mean, he's made it clear, but just how surprised he was about the Luka trade, how upset he was about the Luka trade. He talked about he still has a good relationship with Patrick Dumont. Sorry, I wanted to say Duhome. I don't know why. Still on New Orleans. Dumont, and that they still talk quite often, and that he gives him advice, and he says Patrick takes his advice, and that Patrick has maybe since the Luka trade wanted to learn a little bit more and be more involved in sort of what the right direction for the team is. And then he was asked, and he mentioned a few other executives on the team that he says, I have a good relationship with so-and-so, so-and-so. And then someone said, what about Nico? Do you still have a relationship with Nico? And he said, beat, wait, pause. And then he said, no.
Sounds about right, even though Mark was the one that brought Nico in.
And by the way, the Luka trade, I believe, is the reason. I mean, I don't think that's anything besides that. I don't think that there's some other bad blood there.
Mark never, and it goes without saying, never would have traded Luka Doncic in a million years.
Never.
And Nico did something that Mark probably still views as being catastrophic for the franchise long term. Certainly, their lucky ping pong ball draw changed things. Getting Cooper Flagg, who could turn out to be the next Luka Doncic, the next Larry Bird, whoever, certainly eases the pain. But I get where Mark is there. I think, look, no matter who Mark gets sold to, though, this was probably always going to happen. Like, he was never going to be able to retain any kind of power when it comes to basketball-related decisions.
I'm curious. I don't know how much he owned of the team.
He still owns like 30-some% now, right?
So couldn't he still have been the governor?
He could. I don't know that, but that's like a Patrick Dumont probably wanted to be the governor.
Right.
And I think the NBA certainly wants people that have majority control to be the governor of the team.
Right.
Now, in this 15% stuff, like the NBA, I talked to the league about this. Like, it's supposedly it's been codified in their rules for a long time.
Right.
But this is kind of the first time it's sort of come up.
Right.
Where it's like, hey, Wick is going to have an ownership share, but if he doesn't have 15%, he can't be the governor. Can be the alternate governor. Can't be the governor. And we'll see what Jeannie has left once.
I was going to say, I'm curious about Jeannie. The other interesting thing that Mark gives a lot of interviews. They're not all fascinating because we've heard a lot of this before, but this was actually very interesting and a good job by the hosts asking him questions. And one of the other things he talked about was that there was a real switch 5 or 6 years ago from the NBA going to entrepreneurs who wanted to make the NBA better, make the product better. How do we become better as a league, more attractive, all the things, to being the main goal was to improve valuations of these teams. And it is, of course, the switch to private equity being involved in these franchises. And now that is literally, that is their business is, are we bringing in money? How is the equity being raised? What can you cash out for? That is their only interest.
Yep.
And that he said that he would be at Board of Governors meetings and bringing up like, hey, we can't forget about the fans with X or Y, or how do we attack this problem, or this is what fans are complaining about. Or even with the decision to go with 16 different outlets broadcasting games. And now, the cost of an NBA game. That's a future podcast I want to talk to you about.
I agree. We'll get into that. Yeah.
But, he just talked about sort of the changes. And I think it's worth a listen. I think it's the DLLS Mavericks podcast.
Yes.
I suggest.
Well done. Getting Mark Cuban on the show, getting him to talk, fellas. I do approve of that.